So the set of challenges that the new platforms, new technologies are really creating some, really exciting opportunities to, sort of drive business innovation, take cost out, deliver new products, just drive a general level of innovation. So whether it's that interconnection across the different stakeholders through your processes or products, whether it's that, grabbing hold of that big data concept and the unstructured data and building intelligence out of that to better inform what you do. It's that instrumentation into that offline world to bring that into your business, or the consumerisation of what's happening with the devices and those cloud technologies, resetting the expectation of users about how easy things are to work and how quickly things occur. Great set of opportunities, but the business is sort of at a point of unrelenting pressure. I need it faster, I need it cheaper, I need to harness these technologies for competitive advantage in a way that probably, if I came back to arrived in New Zealand about eight years ago, the level of competition and drive from the business was kind of okay just to get by, and it costs what it costs, and you delivered when you delivered. But I think in that 8-year period, there's been quite a fundamental shift where that's not okay anymore. If you look at it in government, it's not okay just to get your budget and spend it. Tremendous pressure on delivering a better service for less, and it'll be the same for all your business as well. The level of competition has just upped, and the level of pressure from the business is not going away. But that complexity is creating challenges on actually addressing and delivering to that. So that's sort of where we're seeing that, really consistent. And I guess it just popped out after, I guess I had 25 years of just working telco. One of the things I really enjoyed about this job is getting out and talking to customers in other industries, and just that consistency I've found of, it might not be using the same terms, but that looking at the maturity and how to run the change program to build and plan, and the sourcing strategies are just consistently across the customer base, like a major focus. Why is it time to grow up? We still want to have a bit of fun while we're doing this. Probably the term sort of maturity and capabilities is used pretty widely. We've looked at the CMMI model as probably it was the first model, so back in the early 90s, built around software that just got that concept of a phased and progressed model. At that initial layer, it's ad hoc, it's hero-based. A lot of the time things work, but a lot of times they don't. So projects will exceed budgets and time frames. And a lot of the time actually things will work, and that's sort of what's a little funny about that space. But in terms of moving up and dealing with that level of complexity, and I guess the reason why this is relevant is, back in the 90s, this model was explicitly designed to cope with, the SDLC is just a process like any other process, and it's a framework for how you think about that process and the challenges it's got to deal with. So we're not actually advocating that customers should run out and adopt CMI as a model, but it is a good frame of reference for how you think about where are you, what are the challenges you've got, and then what would be a fit for purpose level for your business, and using it as just a reference point about where you're at and what are the sort of interventions you could make that would allow you to deal with the challenges you've got in a fit for purpose way. So we certainly think it's a very valid use of that tool. At level 2, then you have projects, but generally a bit more reactive. So you can manage and you are aware of what's going on, and you'll have better performance, but you'll still have that variability. But at a level 2, you'll have the ability to at least have all stakeholders informed and make informed decisions. Whereas a more ad hoc, sort of chaotic, it's very hard to do that. At level 3, and I guess level 3 is where we just put the marker in as what's fit with that level of complexity that most of your shops have now. Really a level 3 capability is what's required to manage integration, because that's generally what you're having to deal with. Your business is looking for you to manage an end-to-end process or an end-to-end product deployment across quite a complex technology stack. And level 3 is really the set of capabilities and approach to an SDLC that deals with that problem. So it's a nice checklist for how to think about that. I'd suggest that level 4 and 5 at the moment, unless your environment really demands it and the value is there, it's probably a stretch for most companies of the size and complexity you're dealing with here, but then that's a choice and a journey that you just go on past that. In terms of the model, there's 25 different sort of process or practice areas. 7 of them are covered by level 2, 14 by level 3, and then only 2 in each of the above. So in our mind, level 2 and level 3 are really just the only relevant points to talk about. Why does it matter? Business pressures aren't going away. It is a proven way to manage the complexity that you're all sitting on. It does give a level of predictability of outcomes, so the business can make informed decisions. If it's going to invest in some technology, then what turns up, when does it turn up, and what's the cost that it turns up, so that it is an informed decision. CMI is about what happens, it's not about how it does, so it's complementary to PMI and Prince for the project management layer. It works with agile and waterfall approaches, the approach of what you do for tests with TMI or ISTQB. So the set of standards that the people out in the marketplace are used to using their particular practice area, it's all consistent with that. This is just a way of thinking, how do you glue the ecosystem of the SDLC together to allow all these teams to work together in a managed way? Sounds complex, but we actually think it's a base that can be used to help address the complexity issue. So in terms of level 2, level 2 basic project management delivery disciplines would be in place. Paths is defined so you can deal with, you've got different types of projects, so it wouldn't be a one size fits all. And that's one of the mistakes, I guess, that's made by a number of shots, that a one size fits all approach. You all have different type of work, and your approach has to deal with that. Projects are planned and managed. All stakeholders are engaged, and I guess that's an important part. And status and visibility is always there. So you get variable performance, but a level of management control. 4 things that really matter at that. You've got an operating model that's clear on how all stakeholders actually engage in getting the work done. That there's some sort of PMO with governance and stage gating in place. That there is a method that covers all of the different roles that people play. The layers, make sure that, by layers I mean that there's a PM, there's a BA, there's the business or the customer, depending on what your model is, the testers, your operational guys, your business operations guys. They've all got their kind of swim lane in the process. And again, that's just done in a fit for purpose way as to the level of problem you've got. That can be aligned to the different paths you might take through, whether you're doing a small agile bit of work or a large SI job or a package install. And that there's some sort of basic measurement. You've got a start point with your stage gating, you've always got a start point, you've got an end point, that you're actually measuring what's going on. At level 3, then if you look at what's inside on the definition of capabilities, most of them are about integration. They're about what's different about managing integration work. There's also a layer of process management that you actually know how to and invest in managing a level of process. Teaming, more detailed measurement, and supply management are the set of extensions that really cover that integration capability. So the method is then the rest of the investment level 3 is really the more rigour and detail that's involved, which what you get out of that is the predictability of outcome. So at level 3 you should have a predictable and managed delivery capability that can deal with anything your business throws at it. And that's happened. You'll never be in a completely planned state. You've always got interventions coming in and things you've got to deal with. What's really different there, so I think on the agenda slide, so there's 5 key ingredients. 5th one there is really the integrated product process development that set of capabilities brings. The other parts of level 3 are really more rigour and more detail on how things are brought together. I'll just pick up on a couple of those key 5 points. An operating model. What's up here? I'm not saying there's one answer an operating model. Each of your businesses will have one. What I've just drawn here is when I started my role in telecom, running delivery, I needed a clear way of how we were going to run because we didn't have an operating model in place. So I'm just using this as, it's an old example, but just by having that operating model, we looked across plan, build, run. We had a clear view of our business units who are our customers of the service we were running. That meant that we had sort of 5 units that we had to our model had to deal with, treating them each as an individual customer who made investment decisions and had challenges that we had to help. Cross plan, build, run, we had a focus on accountability for architecture and investment, portfolio and PMO and governance, the different delivery teams. And then essentially we had, there's sort of 4 major operational delivery teams there, shared services, technology ops, that equated to about 5 different sort of operational teams. If we were running a project, you had to at least consider the impact on 5 different business operational teams and what it meant to the call centre, the fulfilment team, the billing team, the assurance team, looking with a consumer and business lens. So by having this operating model, we're able to then look at the detail of how we did planning, how we ran delivery, and how that turned up in operations in a way that gave us a level of control. So first thing is it allowed us to make sure that within the next layer of detail, all stakeholders knew how they participated in the process and had their needs met in a managed way. It meant we could get a level of planning occurring, because the first issue I had with delivery was actually what was going on with planning within the business. So it allowed us to get a level of understanding of how planning and prioritisation would work. It meant we could put focus on value management, and so why we've got to take as IT professionals and take the lead on maturity and how the SDLC works. The business should also be mature on how they run business cases and how they're allocating capital and having some control and process over that. The operation model has to be flexible on sourcing strategy, so it should give you allow you to ebb and flow that based on need. And by stepping up and putting control and discipline on the IT shop, there should be an ability to push back on the business to make sure there's also maturity and that the business is fronting with IP, so it's not just high-level information. You know, there's a product spec involved, there's a process definition, there's a clear business case. So that allows also to help at the front end of the process. It also then means we can get the plan and build efficiency model in place. In terms of governance lifecycle stage gates, I thought a simple way to illustrate this was, so what are we doing in our own business? So we've put together if you look at the blue layer, a life cycle. So that's how the SDLC life cycle works for us. It starts with sales and goes through delivery. For you, yours might be more attuned to a product life cycle or whatever's the end-to-end process for your business. Yours will look different. But we've got a set of steps in that life cycle. We've got a stage gate concept. We've got 6 gates defined, and they're a decision point for our business to make a conscious decision about collectively, if we're going to move forward, we're all involved and we all know what the implications are, and we're able to support that. In terms of the layers, that within Optimation, we can then drive down what the PM does, the BA, the commercial team, so we can build that into our process. But we've also explicitly put the customer in our process, so at each point, we're thinking about what's the customer doing, what they're looking for, and are we aligned on value creation, so we've got a win-win situation. And this is then controlled through our governance process, through our governance meetings and through our PMO and through a formal decision process. In terms of paths, key thing, spoke to a number of customers. Yeah, we tried stage gating, didn't work. It's really important that if it goes in, that there's got to be the concept of, you know, allocating that, how that process is going to work and how the governance and overhead is going to work in decision making, so it's fit for purpose for your business. So, you know, what for us that really means, if you look at a project, you know, resource augmentation, consulting work or outsourcing, very different risk profiles, very different decision criteria. So we're navigating a path through that decision. So if you've just asked us to put a PM out in your site, we've got quite a clean way about, you know, which gates are involved and what's the decision, what's the DFA. So the machine can just work and just make decision with what's okay. But where there's more risk involved with the project, we've got a more structured and rigorous process. Within projects, we'll have a subset of projects within that. So just being very pragmatic. I was out with a customer the other day. They said, yeah, we went through stage gating. That didn't work. And it didn't work because they applied a very rigorous one-size-fits-all. They then drank the agile Kool-Aid and completely went over to an agile approach. Of course, that didn't work for that type of complexity environment. So now they're slowly coming back to something in the middle that has that, but they have to sort of go on that journey. So if you start with the concept of paths, then you can just iterate through the detail of which are right for your business. I'll finish on that point about integration, because essentially what that should mean is that at that top layer, and that's generally the layer that you've got to take control of, you've got a team that's explicitly accountable for the end-to-end outcome and integration. So you've got a PM, BA and solution architect in particular that's driving end-to-end definition and decomposing that down into your different component areas, and that your method is able to deal with your teams who are like your ERP specialists, your web specialists, your integration specialists, supply chain guys and what they build. So real clear distinction and capability to manage end-to-end versus the capability builds. Coming together then back at test for a clean deployment with the right sort of enabling processes. Put this slide in just late last night because I just thought it really illustrated that point between why at level 3 definition with the set of processes you'd perform, those processes cleanly align against end-to-end outcome versus the component delivery teams. And really on the right-hand side, that's just the key message. When you've got those capabilities in, your productivity and quality is very manageable. When you don't, the level of risk and waste that's driven through your organisation ends up higher. And there's the number of companies that have adopted this sort of approach is that you've got sort of statistically relevant background over the last, nearly 30 years that kind of shows that that's the sort of benefit that you really do get. We've helped customers with reviews on this. So this is just an example. It's actually a TOGAF-based model. Smaller company, quite an immature state, just went through and using that simple set of operating model recommendations, and then this was particularly to support their development team. It wasn't across that full lot. So what are the set of things they could do within the development organisation that could set them up given the challenge that they had? So this is the sort of thing that we think as practitioners and pragmatic practitioners, we can sit down and help a customer just sort of think through, where are you at now? What's the environment you're dealing with? So what's the right level of intervention? You've got a nice sort of pick list of capability here, and then how might that get applied to address the issues, and then with a plan to get there. So how's that turn up? I think probably the key message is those sort of 5 key areas in that build-up model. I guess what I find talking to a lot of customers who are going on this journey is there's interventions at certain points, but not all 5 are being covered, or if all 5 are being covered, it's not been done in an aligned way. I guess that message is to address that sort of complexity with this sort of capability, you've actually got to have some level of intervention in all 5, and it has to be done in an aligned, coordinated way, which really comes back to leadership and culture then within the organisation. So that's kind of the collection of capabilities that if done well and pragmatically, all your stakeholders can be involved, you can greatly reduce waste, more predictable outcomes will be delivered, which is generally what the business wants. You can leverage common capabilities because it just gets you that efficiency through the business. And the stats will tell you it's a 20 to 30% productivity and therefore capital improvement. And I don't think there's too many companies around, so I don't think there would be that many shops around town that would actually be at a level 3 level of maturity. And going from that ad hoc to that level, you should be able to assume 20, 30% capital efficiency. Generally on your capital program, that's not a small number, so therefore it's worth a level of investment, and it's worth a level of a look about what's the right sort of intervention that's pragmatic that I could make, and sort of what's that journey look like that's fit for purpose for the business. Faster to market. Sort of had a number of conversations within the last month of customers that they were smaller, they went and built capabilities, just rifle shot those point solutions. They've now grown up a bit. Now in terms of their competitive advantage used to be they could get something really quick to market. Now it's slow to market and costly, and it's always, yes, we'll do this quick because that old mindset is there, we can do things quick and cheap. Now they're always exceeding the budgets once they understand the complexity of actually getting that outcome.